The one, the only, Bencio
Good afternoon and welcome to Ideally Speaking as part of the Greater Yeshiva YouTube. Today we're continuing with this book, The 10 Really Dumb Mistakes that Very Smart Couples Make. We're doing the first half of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is titled, A Woman's Need to Talk. It makes it very clear over here that women like to talk more than men. Women are better at talking more than men. Women communicate through talking. You know, it's a famous Gemara, Maseches Kedushin, that 9 out of 10 parts of talking really go to women. The other part to men, apparently, or maybe to animals. I don't know. The Gemara doesn't say. He quotes an interesting. I think it's the Maharal that says the Baal Turim. I'm sorry, that says the word Chava literally means to speak. I believe in Aramaic, Chavi is to speak. And Adam Rishon called his wife Chava on account that she talked. So the obvious question is, most people would say it's negative, that women talk too much. Men would say their wives talk too much. They're always on the phone. She's a bad wife. She'll always be on the phone when you're married. She'll be talking to her friends and keep all her friends that she had before she was married. When you come into the house, she's still on the phone. But most women, at least in the Frum community, are taught to, when they get married, to tone it down a little bit. You don't speak as much on the phone after you get married. He does advise over here in this chapter that women should keep their friends because there's certain elements of conversation that a woman needs and she will not be able to get that communication from her husband because men are wired differently. As he says, men converse about objective things, about concrete things, about business, about sports, about Torah, politics, things like that. And sometimes they'll argue about those things. They'll have discussion about those things. Women are not so focused on those things. Women like to talk more about their feelings. It's not so much about what the topic they're talking about. It's just talking itself helps them bond and communicate. Women talk to communicate. Men talk to share ideas. That's basically what he says about the difference between men talk to share ideas, women talk to connect. So men and women get married. It's very difficult for them because the woman wants to talk all day and the man wants peace and quiet. He doesn't want to listen to his wife 24 hours a day. This is a need for women to talk to their husband. Now, he does confuse one thing in this chapter, I believe most men are able to do this. He seems to say men are not able to do this. He says after learning about this, most of this chapter, he sources from experiments in the non-Jewish world about men and women are different. You know, they lock up 2 women in a room and they say, do whatever you want, and the women will converse. They'll face you. They'll look you in the eye. Men don't look each other in the eye. Sometimes they'll talk. Sometimes they won't. He says he wants to apologize. He owes his mother an apology. He said, once I already understood this distinction, I realized that I owed my mother, Allah Shalom, an apology. When I was away at yeshiva, each time I called home, my mother would ask, what's new? And I had a tough time answering that. What was I going to say? We learned an amazing marshal. We're stuck on a Tosfos. There was little I could tell her because I was in yeshiva and that was my life. It took me decades to understand what she was asking. She wanted to connect. This was her son and he no longer lived at home. She wanted to feel attached. She was asking for details of my life because that was her way of joining me in my life. He brings an example over here. A chassan and kala get married and things are going pretty well. One day the chassan comes home and the first thing his young wife says to him, so dear, how was your day? Good. Just good? Yeah, good. It was good. Is that all? Nothing happened today? No. It was good. This is the beginning of the divide. He's thinking, what does she mean? Just good? What does she think? Some catastrophe happened? I said, good. I mean good. Why is she asking all these questions? She's thinking, why isn't he telling me about his day? Why isn't he sharing with me? What she hears is he wants to be distant. He doesn't want to be connected. He wants to be apart from me. She probes a little more. Nothing happened. Now he's thinking, does she need to know everything I do every minute of the day? Why is she so nosy? Neither of them get it. He's not trying to push her away. It's just that most men simply don't talk about their day. She's not nosy. She just wants to feel connected. And more than that, she wants him to share with her because she wants to feel part of his life. Okay, so if you're a man and this sounds like your life, okay, it's understandable. A lot of men are like this. But this is a skill that a man needs to learn. I'm sorry. You got to learn this as a man. Hopefully you learn this before you get married. If you have friends as a man, men friends, someone says, hey, what's up? How you doing? Hey, Baruch Hashem, everything's good. If you're answering Baruch Hashem, everything's good, that means you don't need to share with that person. Now, a lot of times this is a problem for people learning yeshiva because they really have nothing to share. You want to talk about Torah, that's not really a topic of conversation. Torah is meant when you have a charusa, when you're learning in the Beis Medrash, when you're out of the Beis Medrash, you're at a Friday night dinner, you're at, you meet someone on the street. Just talk about Torah is kind of strange, kind of weird. I know there are Rabbanim and Avreichim that do this, but when someone says, how are you doing, or what's going on in your life, that's not really what you should be talking about. A dignified man, a person who's really a man, should always have something to talk about. He should have interests in the world, opinions in the world. Once you have interest in the world and you have opinions in the world, you'll always have what to talk about. Because there's always current events to talk about. Those people that sort of talk about the weather, they have nothing to talk about usually. Unless it's like some catastrophe with the weather, like some unusual weather, like it's a big snowstorm or it's a huge heat wave. The weather is pretty consistent. Usually it gets cold in the winter and it's warm, very warm in the summer. So if you just find yourself talking about the weather, it means that you're a person who either is not interested, doesn't have interest in the world, which fits a lot of people in yeshiva. And secondly, even if you have interest in the world, you have to develop an opinion on certain things. Just to repeat what it says on the headline in the newspaper is not a topic of conversation because everybody knows what it says on the headline in the newspaper. You have to have an opinion about something. Now, people who are witty and people who have a sense of humor can intertwine that with their opinions, but it's very important to have opinions. Now, that's talking between two men. If you're going to go talk to your wife about politics, about sports, about business, about opinions, about the world, she's not going to be too interested. Most women are not interested in these things. But this is also a skill that a man has to develop. And the better he is at it, the better he'll be with women. And better he'll be with his wife. And that is to be in touch with your emotional self. Men think intellectually, but they also, if they think about it enough, they realize, they feel out what they're feeling, they think about what they're feeling, they can tap into their emotional side. And a real man has a female side to him. He has a feminine side. We're able to tap him into his emotions. I was in the coffee room the other day. The guy says to me, how are you doing? I said, things could be better. He says, what do you mean things could be better? I said, listen, I'm being honest with you. My day's not going so well. And he says to me, well, you should always say Baruch Hashem. I said, listen, 95% of the time in life, we're not in a good mood. Most people are not in a good mood. Women, I don't know. Maybe they're always in a good mood. But most of the time, men are not in a good mood. 5% of the time, you could say Baruch Hashem, things are good. But most of the time, tell them the truth. Be honest with people. Maybe you don't have to give him, he asks you the details why it's not good. Sometimes it's private information. You could say, it's private, I don't want to share that with you. But you should be in touch with that side of yourself. People who walk around saying Baruch Hashem all day, not only are they boring people, but also they're deluding themselves, and they have no ability to connect to anyone, especially to a wife. And if you want to connect to a wife, you have to be in touch with the emotional self. And part of the emotional self, and this is the key, I think, for being successful conversationalists with both men and women, is to be someone who's attuned to detail in life. People who are attuned to the details of life, right? Those people make for excellent conversations. Even if you don't have a great sense of humor. If you have a great sense of humor, it makes it even better. I always say that if you want to dominate conversation with a woman, you got to learn all the different types of flowers out there. If you want to dominate a conversation with men, you got to know all the different spirits out there. It's not spiritual spirits, as in liquors. How to mix the mixology. Mixology. If you want to be a man who dominates conversation with men, be a mixologist. And if you want to be a person who dominates conversation with a woman, go be a florist. I'm not saying you should be a florist, but you should be familiar with this stuff. If you don't understand what these flowers are, you go to pick up flowers for your wife, you should know what different flowers are. If you don't know what they are, take a picture, a Google Lens, and find out what flower it is. You should know about that. You should develop a sense of beauty inside yourself. Women love beauty. They search for beauty, and all types of beauty, not just beauty on people. They want to have their clothes matching. They want to have interior design is important to them. I just, at lunch, I go home for lunch. I talk to my wife. My wife happened to be there, as she is always. And my sister-in-law came over, my wife's sister, with her kids. And we were sitting there talking for 15, 20 minutes. My wife and my sister-in-law were talking about interior design. What's nicer to have, a three-seater and a love seat, and a recliner, or to have a sectional. We're talking about having a sectional, fitting the different dimensions of the house. We're talking about the different sizes of rooms, comparing apartments here in Israel, different styles, different styles of chairs and things like that. We weren't talking about chairs today, but we've talked about that in the past. I'm very knowledgeable. I mean, when we redid a bathroom, and we redid 2 rooms where I'm living currently, and I was all over every detail like my wife. We had a compromise. I wanted one thing and she wanted another thing. A man doesn't have an opinion. I heard when I was a chassan, my Rosh Hashiva, that one of the important things in marriage is that your wife wants to feel that you care about something. So when she goes and she's buying window shades, and she says, "You like the polka dot window shades?" You shouldn't say, "No, I don't care. Just do whatever you want. It doesn't bother me." You should say, "Yeah, I like the polka dot." You should care about it. But that's only half the answer. The truth is that you should have your own opinion about it, right? Polka dots window shades I don't recommend. Get something a little more sophisticated. But you should have your own opinion. And if you're a real man, your wife will even defer to you on things which usually wouldn't make the decisions. Aesthetic beauty, interior design, how you dress. Women are into fashion. Very few men are into fashion. I'm starting to give a series of short videos about fashion tips. You might want to listen to that because I can help men. You can help yourself a lot with women if you know how to dress properly. Women love a man who knows how to dress. In fact, I've heard from women that if there's a good-looking man but he dresses awful, and an average-looking man who dresses well, they'd rather be with the average-looking man who dresses well than be with the really good-looking person who doesn't know how to dress. You think it's counterintuitive. With women, men don't think the same way, right? If the woman is physically very beautiful in her face and her body, and she's not wearing the nicest clothes, you'd rather that woman than an average-looking woman who's wearing, the most up-to-date, trendy, modern-looking clothing. But with women, it's the opposite. Women value aesthetics, and part of aesthetics is how you dress. So, besides knowing how to dress, besides knowing what beauty is, you should have knowledge of this stuff, and that makes for an amazing conversation. You have knowledge about different products, about different brands. Talk about different brands out there, different products, different, materials things are made out of, different places, different locations in the world. To be knowledgeable of geography is important, All this stuff you can find on Google. I wish they would teach it at schools. Teach you all this waste of information, most of it is a waste of information at schools, but they should be teaching you Google. Just Google it. You go to a class, sit down with a teacher, and type in all the names of the brands. Go to Wikipedia, look up where the major brands come from. Who is the owner of the brand? Where is the brand centered? Which country does it come from? What are the price points of the different brands? How wealthy the company is? What's the ticker on the stock market? How's the stock doing? There's so much stuff to know about these things. And then there's different locations in the world. You know, even one country. How many countries are in Africa? Can you name 3 countries in Africa? Can you name 3 countries out of the United States? I see these videos on YouTube. And they walk over to people in Times Square in New York. Can you name 3 countries in the world besides the United States? These people, some of them don't know any. Some of them say Canada and Mexico. They got 2 at least, 2 that border America. Besides that, they don't know anything. They don't know different countries. They don't know where Paris is. People think Paris is in Las Vegas. It's true. I've seen these videos. It's so sad. It's so sad. It's not just for from people. It's for everybody. You gotta know if you want to be an interesting person. Foods, right? It's not just for foodies. It's not just if you know how to cook well. You should know about food. All the different types of meats out there, different cuts of meat. You know, if you're a man, you should know the different cuts of meat. Know which foods you like. You know, different types of fish that are served. You know, you should, when you go to a restaurant and they have a menu there, you should recognize most of the things on the menu. Most people go to a restaurant, they have no clue what to order. They don't know what's on the menu. You got to know this stuff. You got to Google it. Just Google it like I did. I was in Yeshivas Mir when I was like 3-4 years ago. And you know, I wasn't into learning as much as my younger years. So I spent some time in the room that had an internet. Obviously they had the greatest filter that's possible and possibly known to man. But most of the stuff that I wanted to know was available on Wikipedia. You can go to Wikipedia and you can read about. There's so much stuff to read about. People. You gotta know about different famous people also. You know, and besides details, the other thing which makes for interesting conversation is secret and private type of stuff. Other people's conversations. And you know what? It's fun to talk to women about these things. Men don't share details. They won't share details of their private life. They won't share details of someone else who shared private details with them, who happened to have shared private details with them. Women, if you're close to a woman, my wife shares so much stuff with me about other women. Family, non-family. I have a database of knowledge about women from conversations my wife tells me about them. You know, if you don't have a good relationship with your wife, she's not going to tell you a darn thing. But if you have a good relationship with your wife, she'll tell you everything. And you can know so much more than watching any TV show, watching any movie. You just know how people work. You're married to a woman. You know how other married people live. There's so much knowledge to be gained out there. And that makes for an interesting conversation, even if you're not talking about private stuff. A conversation that happened between, my wife was telling me yesterday, she was speaking to somebody, and it came up passing in conversation. The woman's like, I have to beg my husband to take a shower. I said, how often does he take a shower? She said, he takes it like once a week. If I don't say anything, he'll take a shower once a week. I'm like, oh man, once a week. My wife said to this lady, my husband takes a shower every night. He's always telling me, I always tell my wife, I said, if you take a shower every night, it's part of a routine. You don't feel like it's a burden. You want to take a shower. People enjoy showering. Showering is an enjoyable thing. If you don't build it into your, but to hear that this other man, showered once a week, I'm like, this guy's a married man. His wife is young. She's in her upper 20s. I don't know. The guy's probably around the same age. And he's showering once a week? Oh, man. You're not going to find that from any men. No man's going to tell you how often he showers. But you can find out from a woman. They have these conversations about this. This is what they talk about. It's funny. It's entertaining. I love these private, juicy conversations. This is good. Whether you want to talk about Lashon Hara or not, whatever. Maybe you don't have to leave people's names in there. But the main fact is that it's important. It makes life enjoyable to talk about these things. You should want to have conversations with your wife about these interesting things. Now, there are women out there who have a lot of emotional baggage. Every woman has emotional baggage. The question is, how much emotional baggage do they have? They're always going to need time to talk with you and spend time with you. But it could either be a chore for you, like going to a store and picking out, carpet, or picking out, different tiles, or designing a kitchen. It could be a chore for you, but you do it because you want to care about your wife. But the wife senses you're not really there. Or you could be the real man, and you can know the stuff better than her, be more interested than her, because this stuff is interesting. It is interesting. If you focus on the details of life, This stuff is very interesting. And besides being great in conversation with women, you'll also be great in conversation with men. You'll dominate the conversation at every table you're at. The more details about life you know, the more you know about on Wikipedia and Google, all right? You know these facts. You're set for life. You're set for life. You'll dominate. Conversation, a lot more wars are won with words than with weapons. Sometimes people use weapons in war, but there's always a war going around. Men to dominate other men and men to dominate women with words and knowledge. The words come from knowledge, emanate from knowledge. So yes, this chassan and kala, they get married. He has nothing to share with his wife. I don't care, even if you learn in kollel, and you don't know anything about politics, you don't know anything, but if you know about the details of life, you know what to ask. You jump to lunch. You talk about something relatable. They served schnitzel today, or they served a really bad lunch today, and then you can branch off with interesting conversation. Oh yeah, I was at lunch today in the mirror, and I saw all these people, these avreichim, standing. It was chicken wings, my least favorite food, the cheapest food possible. It'd be nice that if you did some shopping and you knew how much it costs relatively, say the chicken breast or the chicken cutlets or the pargiot, baby chicken. It's good to know how much these things cost. A man should do shopping, should be knowledgeable about products, how much they cost, how you make good chicken, how to cook it. A real man knows how to cook. But you can talk about, and in the mirror, the people, that they're standing on the side eating chicken wings. Avreichim learn Torah all day. They're standing. There's no seats available, so they're standing. They don't want to miss any time for their learning, so they're standing eating chicken. I found that funny. I found it very comical and sad at the same time. But then you can talk about conversations you have. There's no day that a person goes, even if you go to the Mir Yeshiva and you learn a full day as an Avreich over there. There's other conversations you had. Talk about your conversation. You're talking about real estate, and you're talking about a real estate investment. Women like when you share with them. They like when you share this stuff with them. And they like juicy conversation. If you could tell them, this person said this and this person, a funny conversation that happened, you might not think it's funny till you verbalize it. But once you verbalize, you realize it's very human, your conversation, and your wife can relate to that. She's really going to enjoy it. So, at the end of the day, women are much better at communicating than men. But if you want a successful marriage, he says in the beginning of this chapter, he opens the chapter, what's the most important skill in a good marriage? If you were to present this question to a room full of people, I think most would say communication. That is, if you were asking, or a room full of women. If you were asking the question to a room full of men, I doubt that would be the answer. And he proves it from some, I don't know, he's really into psychology, all these different studies they did. Yes, women understand communication is very valuable, and they're right, 100%. Communication is the glue of a marriage. If you don't communicate well, the man can't tell the woman how he feels about something, and you're not going to alleviate the problems that bother you, and you're going to pin it on something else, and really, it's buried deep down in your heart, and you're not telling the other person what's bothering you. You have to tell, you have to talk, you have to communicate. And if you communicate, then you can reach compromise. If you don't communicate, no one knows really what's going on. You just get angry at each other and blame it on something else, And the reason it's so important to communicate, the greater reason is because and the hardest time to communicate is what happens in the bedroom. And there needs to be a lot of communication over there also to make sure that both people are satisfied. Because even more important to a marriage than conversation, it's the most important skill in marriage is making love. The bedroom is the most important skill in marriage. But if you don't have communication, then your making love is not going to be any good. And in the other parts of marriage, you're not able to communicate at all. So the most important skill in marriage is what you do in the bedroom. But in order to be good at the bedroom, you have to have communication. So they're half right, the women. That's what to say about this. We'll continue with the second half of chapter 6 coming up later in the week.